got this
I get it. You want to be like Donovan over here. I mean, who doesn't? But you might be struggling a little bit. Well, I'm Fractal Cactus, and I've been playing a lot of Soulstice recently. And I got a few tips for you here today that might help you improve your gameplay and ultimately feel a lot more confident and comfortable playing this game. Without further ado, let's get started. So one of the first things that I'm going to show you here is how to look up enemy weaknesses and how to see what weapons employ those weaknesses. So right here from the title screen, you're going to go to the extras, go down to the codex, and over here to the bestiary. And here are all the enemies in the game. I've only fought 19 out of the 22. I'm not going to show you all of them, but I'm going to kind of give you an idea of how you can tell what these enemies are specifically weak against. So come here, Corrupted. This is the Broken. This is the first enemy that you're going to encounter. If you look down there in its description, you'll see that it's characterized as a Swarmer and is a low-class enemy. Next is the Pikeman. This is the first ranged enemy that you encounter. It's characterized as a Swarmer and is classified as a low-class enemy. Next is the Guard, which is characterized as an armored enemy and is a medium-class enemy. Now, the Champion, you'll see, I haven't fought enough of them. I need to beat one more in order to be able to see what this enemy is weak against. And I think the original Devil May Cry did something similar to that as well. Come down here, this is the Mongrel. It's characterized as a ferocious enemy and is a low-class enemy. This is the Alpha. It is characterized as a resilient enemy, and you'll see that it says it's a poise enemy, right? So when you lock onto enemies in this game, below their health bar is a thin little bar. And as you deal damage to the enemy, that bar will build up. And once it's completely filled, the enemy will be able to be launched. And that's really effective for some of these bigger, faster enemies. It's going to take some of the heat off of you on the field. And it also makes them inactive because they're really strong. This is also classified as a medium enemy as well. Let's take a look at one of the Possessed as well. This is the first Possessed enemy that you encounter here, the Slasher. As you see, it's characterized as a ferocious enemy and also a poise enemy while being a low-class enemy. So you might be thinking to yourself, well, how do I know what kind of damage that my weapons deal? How do I know which weapons are strong against, swarmers or whatever? Well, let me show you. Okay, so we're here in the shop, and I'm on the skill menu. You come over here to Briar and select her, and here's all of the weapons that Briar has access to. And you come in here, and you can see all the different skills that you can unlock, and that's all fine and dandy. You want to be stylish, It's a character action game. Who doesn't want to do that? But while that's important, this is also really important, the proficiencies. And if you look at these weapon proficiencies, you'll see, for example, the Ashen Enforcer, the hammer, is strong against shields and barriers, and it's weak to flying enemies. And as you increase that proficiency, it becomes very strong against shields and barriers, though it's still weak to flying enemies. You can't get rid of the weapon weaknesses. And at its max, it's very strong against shields and barriers. And you'll notice that it's gained a strength against resilient enemies as well. You come down here to the Fists, the Hand of Retribution. This is one of the first additional weapons that you get. The game tells you that it's strong against armored enemies, but it doesn't tell you about any of the other weapon strengths. For a long time, I thought, well, I'm just going to use the Hand of Retribution against the armored enemies, not realizing that all the enemies have different weaknesses, right? So once again, you come down here, look at the proficiencies. You'll see that the Hand of Retribution is strong against armored and weak to ferocious enemies. And when leveled all the way up, it's very strong against armor, but it's also strong against shields and barriers as well. Now here's the bow. Come down here. This one's a little obvious. The bow is strong against flying enemies, weak to shields and barriers, and when leveled all the way up, it's very strong against flying enemies, but also strong against summoners. The Tearing Penance. Tearing Penance is strong against swarmers, so those basic enemies, right? Very strong against swarmers, and then also strong against ferocious enemies as well. And these here, the Merciful Blades, these are really cool. Strong against summoners, very strong against summoners, and then very strong against summoners, but also strong against flying enemies. So this is just the first step. I'm going to show you some stuff about loot next, but learning about the weapons and how they're effective, what enemies they're weak against is very easy and one of the first steps you can take to getting better at this game. So next up, let's take a look at what Lute can do. So the first thing that you're going to take a look at here is her offensive skills. Lute, as you can see, has a ton of skills. Defensively alone, you can unlock 58 different skills for her. So if you come into here in her offense, though, one thing that I really recommend, it's here under the Synergy tab, right? You have Deep Synergy, which allows the Ashen Vindicator Synergy attack can be performed at a lower Unity threshold. That's good and everything, but you come over here to Deep Synergy too, and now all Synergy attacks can be performed at a lower Unity threshold. Unity is this game's version of like the style meter. What you want to do essentially is, as you're fighting, you want to make sure that you're not taking damage, because if you take damage, it's going to reset your Unity. But you also want to make sure that you're attacking with Briar, but you're also using the counter opportunities with Lute. So as you're playing, you're going to see circle above the enemies as you're fighting, sort of like Batman Arkham, right? You're going to press circle, and you're going to sort of challenge the enemy's attack. The better you time it, you kind of want to do it as soon as you see it appear on screen, which can be a little hard when things are hectic, but the sooner that you do it, the better it is, right? There's perfect counters, and perfect counters have different properties as well. So like if I go to defense here, this is her slow category, right? This is the most basic one you're going to have access to immediately. I was a little confused initially because there's also disruption, barrier, and deflection, and the game didn't really tell me what that meant. So what it is it's context sensitive, okay? For example, deflection is when enemies are throwing projectiles at you. Barrier, it seems to be when the enemies are closer to you, they do attacks that you can defeat them with the barrier. And disruption, I'm not specifically sure what this is, but the great thing is that you don't have to know because it's all context sensitive. But here's where the problem lies. By default, disruption and barrier and deflection can only be done against low-class enemies. Remember I was showing you earlier the different classes that they have, which are almost like weight classes, sort of. So one of the first things you're going to want to do when you have access to them is to come down here and purchase these skills. So Lute becomes able to disrupt attacks from medium and high-class enemies too, right? Lute's barrier counter parries attacks from medium and high-class enemies too, and Lute can deflect range attacks from medium and high-class enemies too. This is so crucial. By not having these skills, you're missing out on tons of counter opportunities. I unlocked all these skills and was shocked by how many counter opportunities there were. All of a sudden, now I'm able to press circle like all the time. And not only that, but I'm building Unity a lot faster as well. I would say the defensive skill tree is like maybe the most important for playing the game properly or well. And then there's other things as well that you can do. Like a lot of the categories here, like deflection, Lute's deflection counters can release Cobalt and Crimson Residue. Now, that's not game-changing, but it will allow you to collect more resources to level up. Or, like this one here, Lute's deflection counters release Explosive Shards. It does increase entropy, but you can then unlock it further to reduce the amount of entropy that builds up from employing this attack. And as you can see, the skill tree goes even further. So it's so important to make sure that you're unlocking these skills here. Unblinking, Bulwark, and a Breaker as well. And you know what? Just in general, I think a lot of unlocking this game's potential lies within purchasing skills for Lute. A lot of the skills that you can buy are just like small little quality of life things, but I tell you, purchasing those skills that I just showed you, I was like struggling so much to build Unity and activate the Berserker state. And when I started to buy these, even on like night difficulty and everything, I'm finding it a lot easier to do that. So this is the second tip that I can give you for playing this game well, and I feel as it was meant to be played. That just about does it for the time being. The only thing left to do really is to tie it all together. So I'm going to put some clips up here, one from earlier on in the game and one from later in the game, to kind of show you some examples of how I think the game should be played, employing some of the strategies and knowledge that I mentioned earlier. I'm still playing the game. I haven't beaten it yet. I have a ton of skills left to unlock, especially for Lute. So if I discover anything new or interesting, I'll make another video about that. If you have any questions, let me know down in the comments. I will try to answer them if I can, especially considering that, like I said, I'm still playing this game. Also, if you could, make sure to like and subscribe. It will definitely help me out, especially since I'm new to creating content. And make sure to check me out on twitch.tv/fractalcactusfgc. Anyway, I think I've rambled long enough. I'm going to put the video footage up now and enjoy.